Pol Pot is not as big a genocidalist on the absolute scale, but in this proportional scale, he's the all-time champion, I think, in terms of what percentage of his own population he wiped out in Cambodia in the 1970s. So we get all this. Now, Holdren then wants to have a planetary regime that is a supranational institution, a supranational government that would crush the nation-states and impose the maximum population of the world, and then indeed for each individual country, you get the impression, and they would dictate this. So it's a liberal totalitarian nightmare. I would call it liberal totalitarianism, and it gets down then to having a population law inside countries, according to Holdren, where that's the maximum population, and it would then impose that on every individual family. And one of his most striking demands is that he says, if you already have 2 children and the wife is pregnant again, then compulsory abortion will be in order. That the state would come, the Malthusian police would come and say, this baby has got to be aborted. Men in the same condition would be subjected to obligatory vasectomies. He quotes a program that had existed in India under Indira Gandhi before she found that it got her kicked out of office in 1977, that compulsory vasectomies were imposed on certain classes of males in India. He then wants to say you've also got to have chemical agents to sterilize people that would be put into water and also into foods. And he regards this alternative as being especially democratic and egalitarian because the rich would not escape and the poor would be in the same boat as the rich.
It's really just sick. I mean, let's just overview this. It's unbelievable.
Malthusian madman.
Yeah, I mean, if you look at this, let's just overview it for people. Back in the 70s, this man wrote a publication in favor of the genocide of over 1 billion people through means of starvation and then mass sterilization through its water supply and food supply. This is pure insanity, and this is a guy who is really at the top echelons of this administration right now.
He's in the White House. He's specifically, the science advisor has offices in the new executive office building, if you know where that is. It's about a block away. It's on the same block with Blair House. It's across the street, and it's sort of on the other side of the block, but it's very close. So it's not the old executive office building, but the new one. Now, he's also got other proposals, right? He says you've got to have questions of, for example, marriage licenses. Marriage licenses should be extremely expensive in Holdren's world. So that means that would be a regressive tax. And in my book, or any New Deal approach to these things, a regressive tax is the worst kind of thing. It's what Thatcher wanted to do with the poll tax in England. In other words, if everybody has to pay $500, some people won't eat, and some people will have to give up, a round of golf or something. So there's no comparison. He also wants to have baby permits, that women would be given permits saying you have the right to have so and so many kids, maybe 2.2, and you can sell the rest in a market. They're marketable permits, meaning that Goldman Sachs could also come in and create a speculative market in those permits as well. A lot of taxation would be used. You'd lose your child tax credit. You'd lose your exemption for children if you had too many. If you went over 2, you would find that public education would no longer be free, but you'd have to pay for the public school. I mean, this stuff is absolutely monstrous. This takes you right back to, the treadmill and the poorhouse. It takes you back to Scrooge, right? It's back to the free market, right, as it existed in England in the early 19th century. So it's absolute
I see a lot of the proposals that are coming out, Webster, kind of as a softer version of what he wrote about in the 70s. Like you said, in the 70s, they're writing about, we'll just sterilize people, compulsory abortions, compulsory vasectomies. But now they're saying, well, we won't necessarily do that. We're just going to overtax you for your children and give you kind of like a China one-child policy, but we'll make it a two-child policy. And if you have enough money to, support your kid, your third child in public education, you obviously have enough money to buy the other 0.8 child permit that you would need from some other family, correct?
Yeah, these people are crazy. His leader is this Paul Ehrlich, who in 1968 wrote a book called The Population Bomb, which, like so many of the studies that came out in this orgy of pessimism, and obscurantism and anti-science hysteria in the early 70s is discredited because there is no population bomb. If you look at Russia, look at Europe, look at Japan, the populations are falling. The U.S. would be falling without immigration, and for the rest of the world, things will apparently stabilize within a couple of decades. So there is no population bomb.
Look, all I can say is I drive all over the country. There are open fields, mountain ranges. There's nobody there. There's more than enough room for billions more, folks. We'll be back after this. It's the InfoWarrior with Webster Tarpley.
The New World Order beast is genetically modifying your food, mixing vegetables with animals, and now experimenting with viruses. Without a long-term food solution, you will have just two options: starve, or surrender. All canned food supplies will eventually run out. What then? Grow your own healthy food and feed your family forever. SurvivalistSeeds.com is now the nation's largest bulk heirloom seed company, and it's owned by a real patriot, Big John Lipscomb. You can now have an infinite amount of healthy vegetables like a watermelon, a bundle of carrots, or tomatoes for a little more than a penny each. SurvivalistSeeds.com. And now you can go into business with Big John at SurvivalistSeeds.com by becoming an affiliate. See his link at SurvivalistSeeds.com.
Don't nobody know my trouble was gone. Oh, Lordy, my trouble's so hard. Oh, Lordy, my
We are back. It's the InfoWarrior with Jason Bermas. We're joined by Webster Tarpley, accomplished author. The newest book is Surviving the Cataclysm. Webster, I want to shift gears and get your take on what's going on with all these town halls. We now have Obama and others out there campaigning. Now he's openly saying, there's no such thing as these death panels everybody's talking about. What is really in this legislation, and what's going on with these town halls?
Well, let's look at the legislation, or even before that. Let me just mention a couple of other people in the White House, right? Holdren also wants to take babies away from teenage unwed mothers. If they're not married, they're going to be seized and carted off. So we've also got this other guy, Cass Sunstein, in the White House, who would be one of the people who would supervise translating the law into regulations. And Sunstein believes he's a Benthamite in the Malthusian in this sense, and he also believes that you've got to essentially ration care. And he operates between a guy called Richard Posner, a federal judge in the Illinois area, who was also on the same line, and above all, this Peter Singer. Peter Singer being this he's a Benthamite utilitarian philosopher, I guess, at Princeton,
and a notorious one-worlder.
The guy's a genocidalist, right? He wants to have. He believes in legal rights for animals. Mm-hmm. That makes him a moderate in the Obama administration, because Holdren believes in legal rights for trees. So Holdren goes one better. So you've got this entire bunch of people. Now, Obama has also basically indicated a strong tendency in this direction, maybe not as explicit as these people. Obama says it was a big ethical problem for him, for his mother, to have a hip replacement operation when she already had received her cancer diagnosis. So is that a legitimate use of public resources, of the resources of society? Now, you got to put this in the perspective. This is the guy who is shoveling $24 trillion, trillion with a T, across the room to Wall Street, to Goldman Sachs, to J.P. Morgan, to Citibank, to Bank of America, Wells Fargo, Bank of New York Mellon. Right? Remember, this is the biggest Wall Street puppet of all time. The government has been completely seized by Wall Street. That's who you're fighting. You say government. It's not the government. It's Wall Street. All of these characters like Summers and Geithner, right? These are Wall Street operatives who are masquerading as government officials. So target is Wall Street, just by the by. But these characters now have shot their mouths off. Obama says he wants you to have hospice care. He wants you to have a living will. He seems to want it to say, do not resuscitate. In other words, not even a defibrillator, right, to save money. Too expensive. Therefore, obviously, there's great mistrust about Obama. His wife, Michelle, what was her job? She worked at the University of Chicago hospitals. This is all written up in Obama, the Unauthorized Biography. She was a bouncer. It was a patient-dumping scheme poor black people would come in out of the nearby ghetto, Hyde Park, to the very modern, state-of-the-art University of Chicago hospital. They'd ask to get treated. Michelle Obama's job was to push them out, to deny them care, to ration care. One of her favorite methods was let them sit there for 3 or 4 hours, ignore them. If they look like they're poor and black, don't give them anything. This is Michelle Obama. Then you've got, other people. I mean, we could go through a whole list, right? Zeke Emanuel, somebody who's written that if you have dementia, right, if you have Alzheimer's, you should get nothing. He has his own triage. He says up to 15, you're a low priority. Between 15 and 40 or 45, you're a high priority. And then again, after 45 or 50, you're a very low priority. So you've got to somehow triage this stuff.